Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diane Meridian. I'm the author of Through My Mind's Eye blog. It's a blog that is dedicated to mental health interpreters working within the mental health arena. Two areas that I am very passionate about. One is interpreting. I'm a Spanish-English interpreter. And also working currently as a psychiatric social worker for the Monterey County Health Department. So it was my hope to combine these two areas of great interest for me on behalf of colleagues that might benefit from experiences as it relates to mental health. And up to now, I've been focusing on information relative to general mental health, domestic violence, childhood trauma, things that an interpreter might come into contact with in the course of his or her work in a mental health arena. But most recently, I did a blog post on self-care as it relates to compassion fatigue, otherwise known as vicarious trauma. And I decided to do a video post instead of writing an additional post, because I think this is a topic that's much more personal. I mean, it's certainly very personal for me, something of great interest, and I would imagine for many of you, something that's interesting to you as well. And compassion fatigue, as it relates to the work we do as interpreters, is very common. I actually didn't even know there was a term for what I was experiencing until probably within the last, I'm going to say, 5 to 6 years. That compassion fatigue had a name, it had certain characteristics, and there was actually something that I could do proactively to help myself preserve my energy, and that would be my emotional energy, my physical energy. And I think at this point we're probably all fairly familiar with what compassion fatigue is, or as also known as vicarious trauma. But I read somewhere something very interesting, that vicarious trauma is like the residue that stays with us after we've been involved in an experience with another person. And that idea that this residue of our interaction with our limited English speakers and their service providers is such an apropos visual, I think, that it sticks with us. And interpreting is an incredibly rewarding experience. I mean, I've had the great fortune in my entire career to always be doing something I loved and believed in, and that's working with the LEP population. That being said, it is a very strenuous activity. And I think for us to be able to stay in it for as long as we want to be in it, it's important to understand the impact that some of our interactions have on us. And I think you can look at this, or we can look at this in a couple of ways. One, there are particular situations that really shake us to the core, assignments that we take as interpreters that really just are very emotional, or very draining emotionally, physically. And then there's also the impact of our cumulative experience, which is also significant. So there can be a one-time rock you to your core experience, as well as the cumulative experience over time. And regardless of the industry that you interpret for, could be healthcare, could be emergency services, finance, insurance, anywhere where there are a variety of people involved, whether it's service providers, limited English speakers, family, friends, there's always an opportunity for you to become involved in strenuous situations. Sometimes things work well, and sometimes we know they do not. So we come away with the emotion, the adverse outcomes, the tension, the confusion, the frustration that may be associated with this interaction that we've helped facilitate. So the idea of being able to figure out how we can best take care of ourselves is something very relevant, because it really affects the quality of our life now, or how well we don't take care of ourselves affects the quality of our life now, into the future, as well as our interactions with the people around us in our personal life. So it really is something very significant, and it's not like something you can turn off like a faucet, turn it off, turn it on. That, when you're at work, you leave it at work. When you're at home, you're at home. In an ideal world, you would be able to turn that off, but it doesn't work like that. So, understanding and being sensitive with ourselves is really significant. So how I'd like to kind of kick this off would be to engage you in an interactive exercise. And that would be to look back at your career as an interpreter, however long that is, and take a personal inventory of the types of situations that you've been involved in that have had some type of impact on you. And I'm using the word impact purposely, as well as using a word that's fairly general. And the reason is this, because different situations affect us differently. We're all different people, so something may affect me one way and affect you in a different way, and then another person in a different way. So it's important to keep in mind that whatever is true for you is what's important. Whether it's had an impact or not had an impact on someone else is really not relevant for this particular exercise that we're going to do. So what I'm going to ask is that you do an inventory with yourself. Look back, jot down the experiences that you've had, specific and or general, that have left their mark on you in some way. And we're not going to do anything more with that than just start with an inventory. And my belief is that in order for us to come up with a good plan of how we can help ourselves, we have to actually know what's going on. And we can't do that until we really understand how we've been impacted. So don't censor yourself. Don't judge yourself. Is it right? Is it wrong? What are people going to think? No one's going to see this but you. And I'm going to do this myself. I was actually thinking I had already in my inventory in my mind, but as I started to think back over the course of my career, other things started to bubble up. So our first assignment for you and for me is to do this inventory of experiences we've had interpreting where we've had a situation that's impacted us. Maybe it's just one, or maybe it's multiple. And try to be as specific as possible. If you remember when this was, the month, the year, what the situation is. Like I said, you're not going to share this with anyone, so there's not an issue around confidentiality. This is just to kind of get the cobwebs out of our minds and get real about how we've come to be where we are, because we're all anybody that's watching this has an interest in self-care, and there's a reason for that. So let's start there with our inventory, and then when we come back together, then we'll go through the next step of what we're going to actually do with the inventory. So right now, just get it all out and think broadly and see what you come up with. I'm looking forward to the next video post. This is nothing fancy. I'm actually doing this on my telephone. So this is low budget, very grassroots, but I did want to do something a little bit more personal around a very important topic. So have a wonderful afternoon, and I will talk to you in our next video post. And I'll look forward to what we can do together with this inventory we come up with.